most powerful blender that you can possibly afford. I use my blender so much in cooking, in preparing foods, so much. And I've got a Optimum, which is the equivalent of a Vitamix, which are like, you pay, Optimum, I think I was paid about $400 for it. The one that Vitamix is like over $1,000. But you get such smooth milks with it. They really are smooth. Yes. So we got to wait for the 4 minutes? Okay, we'll just wait. And remember, all of these online. I don't know if this is going live, is it? Oh, okay, so that's it. Yes? Don't think so. Okay. By the way, I must ask you this. Did anyone order this book and didn't pick it up? I've got one left and I don't know who ordered it. Okay, so if you didn't, we'll just wait and see. Otherwise, I want to get rid of it. Can you ask her if she ordered it? Because I've got one left. I don't know. Well, possibly. Okay. Yeah. Just check this works. Actually, I'll just tell you this. Well, I've still got a minute. Next Tuesday, after the next Tuesday's meeting, we want to invite you to stay back for a little while and have a meal with us here.
Oh, what can we bring?
No, you're going to be specially treated. We're going to have something very special and very nice. It's not going to be ultra fancy. We want to show you how you can feed people very economically. So just remember that. That's after the Tuesday meeting. So that's 1 month's time. After the Tuesday it'll just be right, because it'll just be just be right on lunchtime, won't it, when we finished? So just remember that. But I will need your names in so we know how many are coming, to make sure that you book in. Here we are again, another class ready to start. Today's talk is on the gut-brain connection, but I want to share a few, just recap a little bit. What have we learned about so far? How important the 8 laws of health are. And we remember them by spelling out the word New Start. It's an acronym for nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. Okay, and what is the diet we like? Whole food, plant-based. Because, let's face it, I'm a vegan vegetarian. I've been a vegan vegetarian now for around 30 years. I've been a vegetarian for 40 years plus. And I noticed the difference when I went from meat to being a vegetarian, but I noticed a dramatic difference from going from a vegetarian to a vegan. So when I was the first vegetarian, I ate milk and dairy products. But once I cut them out, I noticed a big difference. But there was something else that I've learned, and I'm going to share that with you today, which I feel that I learned in my health journey. But now I'm proposing that the most optimum diet is a whole food plant-based diet. I talked about the China study, how Dr. Colin Campbell found the cause of cancer was animal protein. I talked about the fungal disease link, how so much fungus around, and how we've got to avoid it as far as possible. Gave you some of the ways you can counteract it in your lifestyle. I talked about excitotoxins, the taste that kills. And this is something that most people aren't aware of. And they just go, you go to the supermarket, you can virtually buy no prepackaged food, canned food. It's all got excitotoxins in it. So if you want to be really healthy, you've got to get off all of those things because excitotoxins cause inflammation. But some more things to do. And as I said, today's talk is on the gut-brain connection. Now, what has happened? There is a connection between our gut and our brain. And I tell you what, if you're like me, I know when I was a young kid how much smarter I was than what I am now. And you know what? It shouldn't be the way. Our minds were not designed to get old and aged. We still should have sharp minds. Our bodies will age, but our minds should still develop. So something has happened. What has happened? Well, I believe it is our lifestyle choices causing us to lose the sharpness of our minds. And we're going to talk more about that today. And the best diet, whole food, plant-based diet. Look at that. That looks good, doesn't it? Now, research today. Memory problems link the brain and the food we are eating. So what are we eating? And we have a second brain that is called our enteric nervous system. And it consists of some 100 million neurons that are embedded in the walls of the long tube of our gut. And it's loosely called microbiome. We've all heard that we have to get our microbiome. If we want to be healthy, our microbiome must be in correct balance. So the microbiome does many important things. It breaks down foods, fights off infections, boosts our immune system, manufactures vitamins to keep our brain healthy, manufactures neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin. They maintain the integrity of the gut. But however, scientists are finding that they may do even more than that and have an important role in our mental health. Now, I've got this book here, which is called The Brain Maker by Dr. David Perlmutter, who's a neurosurgeon or a neurologist, a fellow of the American College of Nutrition. I found this book, and he's got another book called The Grain Brain, very interesting. And this brain maker is very, very interesting because it talks and it puts a connection between what we eat and how our brains function. And he has looked at the relationship between many common grains and brain health. And he believes that grains affect ADHD, anxiety, chronic stress, chronic headaches, migraines, depression, diabetes, epilepsy, focus, concentration. Isn't that a good one? Focus and concentration. And that is where I believe most of people our age are crying out. Oh, I can't seem to focus right. I can't concentrate. Okay, inflammatory conditions and diseases, including arthritis, insomnia, intestinal problems, including celiac disease, gluten sensitivity and irritable bowel, memory problems and mild cognitive impairment, frequently a precursor to Alzheimer's disease, mood disorders, overweight and obesity, Tourette syndrome and much more. Okay, but another part of the study shows that babies born to women who are sensitive to gluten lived with an increased risk of developing schizophrenia and other psychiatric disorders late in life. So your kids, they're at risk. If you have a gluten sensitivity, your kids are at risk. Okay, but could it be possible that everyone's brain is having a negative reaction to gluten? It is causing an inflammation in the body and in particular to the nervous system. We know that hamburgers and pizza and all those things, those things, we know how harmful they are to us. But do we know, what about carbohydrates and wholemeal grains? So studies coming out describe Alzheimer's as a third type of diabetes. Began to emerge in 2005. Has anybody heard that before? A third type of diabetes. Normally people with diabetes have high blood sugar because their bodies cannot transport sugar into cells where it can be safely stored as energy. The sugar in the blood causes lots of problems, and toxic sugar inflicts lots of nerve damage, heart disease and Alzheimer's. The entire body is inflamed. And what instigates this inflammation? Gluten and a high carbohydrate diet are the most prominent stimulators of inflammation. And often we are not aware that our brains are being negatively affected when eating these. So Alzheimer's is now being called diabetes of the brain. Digestive disorders and food allergies are much easier to recognise because symptoms of gas, bloating, constipation and diarrhoea are evident. As I said, books like this are incredible because all of a sudden you find so much more information that people are coming up with. Gluten causes leaky gut. Now, you've probably all heard of leaky gut, and I would actually believe that every one of us has it. We have a leaky gut. Gluten is a protein that acts as an adhesive material holding flour together to make bread products. And the gluten protein molecule is likened to a pearl necklace. The hydrochloric acid should undo the clasp of the necklace, and our digestive enzymes are like the scissors, cutting off individual pearls. So just picture the pearl necklace. Our digestive enzymes should cut up every single amino acid separately. But what happens? They don't. And all of a sudden you have these bunch of amino acids. It says you can have them in clumps of 11 or 15 or 33. And they just they go straight through and they rip holes. Remember, the lining of your gut, your digestive tract, is only one cell thick. Very fragile, very easy to break, but it is also very easy to repair if you give it the right foods, right? So just remember that. You can repair it, but you've got to. But if you're continually giving it the wrong foods, it's continually tearing holes in it. And these clumps tear holes in our gut lining. It stimulates the immune system and causes inflammation in the body. And the two large clumps get into the bloodstream and go to the weakest part of the body. Now, this Dr. Marias, however you say his name, he's the most respected researcher in gluten sensitivity. And he estimated that 99% of people whose immune system reacts negatively to gluten don't even know it. He states that gluten sensitivity can be primarily and at times exclusively a neurological disease. So we've always said it's a digestive problem. Leaky gut is digestive. But he's saying it's neurological. In a Lancet Neurology article in 2010, he calls for the change to get the word out about a seemingly invisible gluten sensitivity and brain dysfunction. And this neurobiologist, Aristo Voidani, has published extensively on the topic of gluten sensitivity, says the gluten sensitivity is now 20 times higher than it was 3 decades ago. And do you know how they know that? They found some blood that was taken from some people who were going into the armed services in America, probably 60 years ago. Now, normally blood does not keep that long, but somehow or other it was stored in a way that has kept. And they found this blood and it was intact and they could test it. And so they tested to find out, was there gluten sensitivity in these people who are going into the army? And they said, no, it wasn't there. So it's something that has crept into our food supply over the past however many decades. They said it wasn't there 3 decades again. So when did it come? Yes, but there's a lot of other things too. I also think it is the way they have altered our grains. And we're going to talk about that next month. And next month's talk is on how they've changed our grains. Okay, but even though you may not be sensitive to gluten in the same way an individual celiac is, we all may be sensitive to gluten from a neurological standpoint. Just remember that. So you say, oh, I'm all right. I'm not allergic to gluten. I can eat bread. Can you? Just ask yourself, are you getting a fuzzy brain? Just realise that could be related to it, and I believe it is. I found out it was for me. I changed, and probably when I became vegetarian, the thing I did is I substituted all those meat and I ate a lot of grains. And I couldn't believe how fuzzy I was getting in the brain. I thought, this shouldn't be so. Vegetarian diet is supposed to be healthy. And I realise now, my research now tells me this. Now, since I've cut out so many of my grains, I can think a lot clearer than I ever did before. Not saying it's perfect yet. Takes a lot to get back to how you were when you were as sharp as when you were younger. If only you could remember like that. But inflammation is at the heart of all disorder and disease. And when we take anything into the body that triggers this inflammatory response, we are at greater risk from headaches, brain fog, depression, and Alzheimer's. Thus, gluten is now linked to schizophrenia, epilepsy, bipolar, autism, and ADHD. Elevated blood sugar and the GI. How do carbohydrates impact on brain health? Well, we know that the carbohydrates bring up our blood sugar. And this elevated blood sugar, let's take sugar has a GI, a glycemic index, of 68. Candy bar has 55. A banana, 54. But what amazes many people that the whole wheat bread has a GI of 71. So putting it equal with white bread. In fact, the few foods produce as much surge in the blood sugar as foods made with wheat. And you have wheat in so many things, so many things. High blood sugar levels affect the brain, and they affect specifically the part of the brain called the hippocampus, which mediates memory function. A recent article in Neurology reported that elevations of blood glucose and glycated hemoglobin translate in two things: a shrinkage of the hippocampus and an increased risk for developing dementia. So, high blood sugar level affects our brain. It's a profound correlation to recognise that even subtle elevations of blood glucose well below levels may be considered diabetic, may be already damaging to the brain. An elevated blood glucose and glycation of proteins relate to an increased risk for cognitive dysfunction as well as brain shrinkage. And heart disease begins when your blood sugar is in a high range. Be careful. We need to keep our blood sugars down. Normal blood sugar should be between 4.6 and 4.7. 5.2 is too high. And most people's blood sugar are running. A lot of people are pre-diabetic because they've got a little bit more running around in their body than they should. And I'm going to share with you at the end how to lower it. Okay? A study in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease says individuals consuming high carbohydrate diets had about an 89% risk for developing dementia. In contrast, 40% of those whose diets were high in fat. Okay? And it says 2012 research from the Mayo Clinic showed that older people who fill their plates with carbohydrates have nearly 4 times the risk of developing mild cognitive impairment, such as problems of the memory, language, thinking, judgment, all generally precursors to Alzheimer's. So how many carbohydrates are we having? So what I'm trying to get at, if you want to change from a meat diet to a diet of vegetarian, don't make the mistake like I did, just substitute with grains. I find when I do that, I can't think straight. I really can't. So you need to realise the way to go is to substitute with legumes. Legumes and your nuts, a very small amount of nuts and seeds, not many, but your legumes, primarily your legumes. Yes, you can have some, but you like your potatoes and your rice, not your rice as much. Yeah, we have a rice, but more so, but not predominantly. And I was using too much of the grain products. I know I was. A study in the Journal of Alzheimer's, this particular study found that those diets that were high in healthy fats were 42% less likely to experience cognitive impairment. And I just as I'm thinking of it, if I don't say it now, I'll forget about it. But I can still remember, and I was talking to a friend, some of you have heard me talk about Barbara O'Neill, and you may have watched her clips on YouTube. She's very, very popular. But I was talking to her and she says, what you do is substitute. I was saying, well, we have a lot of rolled oats and porridge for breakfast and that sort of thing. She said, substitute some lentils for breakfast, something like that. But she said, have lots more of your nuts and seeds. So we have a mixture. Probably we have 1/4 cup of mixture of sunflower, sesame, pepitas, and linseed. And I grind them up fresh every morning. Always fresh. You never ever have old linseed, because the moment you break the skin of your nut or your seed, it will oxidize. So you need to eat it fresh within 20 minutes of grinding. So I grind mine fresh every day. I'm going to use it. And I have that primarily with a little bit of fruit in the morning, and then I maybe have some lentils. Sometimes I have gluten-free grain or something like that. We have a lot of millet, or sometimes we have rice or something like that in the morning for breakfast. Yeah, but that changed. The moment I did that and substituted and put those nuts and seeds, just a small amount, not a huge amount, probably, as I said, there was 1/4 cup between the two of us. So that's 1/8 cup that I'm having of a morning. And you know what? And it holds you. You'll eat it in the morning and it will stay, and you won't be hungry until you eat at lunchtime. Because I don't eat in between meals. So I'm having a breakfast and then at lunchtime again, and I'm not at all hungry. I'm not snacking in the morning. That causes inflammation too. Be careful. Nothing between your meals. Eat just your... And we only eat twice a day. We have our breakfast and our lunch, and that's it. Nothing in there, nothing. And I'll talk about that intermittent fasting later on. Because we have to, you see, we have to put those healthy fats in, those fats like olive oil, omega-3s, and you find them in your nuts and seeds. And you have them in some grains too. But plus I have a little bit of avocado when they're in season and I've got access to them. But we need fats. We really need good fats for our brain. And you know what? That's one thing that if you have problems with people with depression, you have to have fats. Fats, and then people are not eating enough not eating enough nutritional foods. I read a report last week of a group of children who were they had not Alzheimer's. They have, what do you call it? They were see, it's just gone from my mind now. They were ADHD. They weren't ADHD. They were autistic. Now it's come back to me. Autistic. They were autistic. They put them on 18 weeks of sprouts added to their diets. Now, sprouts have a nutritional content of 20 to 30 times more than your normal food. And they just added sprouts to it. And within that 18-week period, 30% of them had a dramatic improvement. So I'm having vegetables, having fats with you. Vegetable fat is far superior to animal fat for enhanced learning, create more flexible membranes, promote greater communication efficiency, where animal fats make nerve communications more difficult. And we need omega-3s, 6s and 9s for healthy brain function.
I thought we did, 6 is in...
6 is in everything. Yeah, 6s are in everything. Most people don't have trouble finding 6s, especially their 3s. Years ago, it used to be in people's diet, they used to have a ratio of 1 omega-3 to 2 omega-6, and that was good. But now it's 1 to about 15 or 1 to 20. They're having so many omega-6s and they're having hardly any omega-3s, and that's what's causing their problems with their cognitive function and their brain function. Okay, sugars. Refined sugar is actually toxic to our body. Table sugar is a combination of glucose and fructose, and when we eat 100 calories of glucose from a potato, our bodies metabolize it differently than if we were to eat 100 calories of sugar, comprising half glucose and half fructose. But the glucose is from carbohydrates and starches and are processed by every cell in the body. But fructose is different. Be very careful if you find foods with added fructose in them. Very differently, because it's processed differently by the liver. So consuming glucose and fructose at the same time means your liver has to work harder. But consuming fructose alone has no immediate levels on blood sugar and insulin level, but it has a more long-term dangerous effect. It goes straight to your liver. The science is well documented. Consuming fructose is associated with impaired glucose intolerance, insulin resistance, high blood fats and hypertensions. And because it does not trigger the production of insulin and leptin, 2 key hormones in regulating our metabolism, diets high in fructose lead to obesity and its metabolic repercussions. And so if you have, and you can find those fructose, especially in biscuits, cakes, a lot of these health bars, they have added fructose. Don't get sucked into buying these little health bars. If you want a health bar, Make your own. Sweeten it with honey and dried fruit. But don't get caught into that. Fructose is worse for your body than sugar. And sugar is very harmful. So fructose will cause you to have a fatty liver. And fructose is in a lot of these diet soft drinks and all these soft drinks. And it causes fatty liver. So you've got children who are 13, 14 having these soft drinks, and do you know what? They've got fatty livers. They've got the livers of alcoholics. That's what happens. You get the liver of an alcoholic by having too much fructose. And fructose is different. Natural fruit has much less sugar than a can of soda or a concentrated fruit juice, but eating too much fruit can adversely affect our blood sugar. So don't go overboard on sugar. Remember them, be mindful of the foods that will raise the blood sugar. So you look at an orange versus orange juice. How many oranges to make a glass of orange juice? And it's so easy to drink just a glass of orange juice down, but you're going to take time to sit and chew through 4 or 5 oranges. And that's the difference. And obesity, it says, today it is known the fat cells are complex, sophisticated hormonal organs. This is especially true of visceral fat, the fat wrapped around our liver, kidneys, pancreas, heart and intestine. Obesity, it triggers an immune reaction which includes the production of an inflammatory chemical that leads to brain degeneration. A study found that the larger a person's belly, the smaller the brain's memory centre, the hippocampus. Sad, isn't it? You need to be careful of the food. Caloric restrictions. But extensive studies shows that when animals are on a restricted calorie diet, typically by 30%, their brain production of a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, rises, and it creates neurons in the brain. So if you're eating less food, you will think clearer. It's because we're eating too much food. And isn't it hard to cut your food down? In 1970, the United Nations estimated that the average adult in the US eats 3,770 calories daily. Normal consumption for a man should be 2,500 and a woman 2,000. So they're eating over an extra one and a half times. Fasting. Now, this is a very beneficial practice. Fasting not only turns on the production of brain-derived neurotrophic, remember that factor that we need, but enhance detoxification, reduction on inflammation, and increased production of brain-protecting antioxidants. Fasting shifts away from using glucose as a fuel to using ketones manufactured in the liver. Simple fasting enhances the energy production and enables the brain to function better and more clearly. And how often people who say they fast, I fast, and your brain, you can think very clearly when you fast. Now, leaky gut, we're just going to go back for a moment. The quality, quantity and composition of the bacteria in your gut have an enormous influence on your brain. Our gut bacteria determine whether we are going to have a healthy brain or not. So that we need a healthy microbiome. So leaky gut, once again, it's a term that we've got holes in the lining of our intestines. I told you about that a moment back. But now during normal digestion, the tight junctions in our intestinal cells stay closed. And so you can't so normally that 1 cell thick lining of your gut should be intact, but it's not. It gets holes ripped in it by these clumps of molecules passing through. So then all of a sudden, you've got large undigested food molecules and other yeasts, toxins, and all other food forms of waste now freely flow into your bloodstream. And they shouldn't be in your bloodstream. Yes, some things should be in your bloodstream, but that lining is there to filter out what shouldn't be in there and keep it in your gut. But things are getting into our bloodstream. For instance, we shouldn't have fungus in our bloodstream, but that's where we have. Yes, you will have a fungal problem in your gut, and if it stays in your gut, you can pass it through. But if it gets into your blood, that's what causes your problem. And your body reacts to these. Initially, the liver works overtime and tries to screen out all the particles that your intestinal lining was supposed to take care of. And in most cases, the liver has no chance of keeping up with the constant flow of waste in your blood and all the toxins, undigested food molecules, yeast and other pathogens start to accumulate in your body. So this is where we have a problem with inflammation. Your immune system wakes up, it fights the foreign bodies, but the foreign bodies are absorbed into tissues throughout your body, causes your body to inflame. I've heard a lot of people, they've got inflammation right throughout your body. What's causing it? Your immune system wakes up. Now that your body is focused on fighting a large war, the little battles are starting to be ignored. Like filtering out the blood, calming inflamed areas of the body, fighting bacteria, regulating the gut. See, that's what our bodies should be doing. So our bodies are just so busy fighting against your immune system is fighting against these pathogens that are there. It hasn't got time to do the cleaning up. It's like if you're cleaning up something, you haven't got time to do the spring cleaning. You know, those little jobs that you only do once in a while. You're just so busy doing the main things that are always there. This process can lead to your body fighting itself an array of autoimmune diseases such as chronic fatigue, MS, IBS, ulcerative colitis, and fibromyalgia. It produces antibodies. These antibodies are destined to fight against these foreign objects such as casein, nuts, grains, or eggs. And you see, when you've got these holes in your in your guts, in your lining, all of a sudden you can have a bit of cashew nut can get through. And all of a sudden your body will react and have an autoimmune reaction, and you'll get, I've got an allergy to cashew nuts. Or some people, one lady I was speaking to, she could only eat 4 foods. I couldn't believe it when I heard it. She was so sensitive. She was sensitive to smell. She was sensitive to everything. Her immune system was so working so hard.
If the leaky gut gets healed, will that go away?
Eventually, but it can take a long time. When you've got it so bad, there's a lot of healing to do in your body. But it can be done. It can be done. You've got to go on a very restricted diet, and you have to introduce foods very slowly at one time. And sometimes, like eggs, that particle egg will get through that hole that's ripped in your gut lining, and all of a sudden, I'm allergic to eggs now. And you've never been allergic to eggs before in your life. Why? Because you've developed this allergy because of the holes that are ripped in your lining. Even chemicals normally found in foods such as phenols and glycerin can now trigger immune responses when they enter the body. So it's also the chemicals that you're taking in through modern life. You know, plastics, and we're just exposed to smells. Every smell that we smell has to be detoxified by our body. And so some people there, especially people who are very into perfumes and all that, sometimes you can get so sensitive you can't even handle perfumes. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just cannot handle when they have clothes and you use a certain soap powder, and you think, I just can't handle that soap powder. So I'm just very careful. I don't want a fragrance in the soap powder either. Because your body has responded to this and you react to it. So food sensitivities develop. Any undigested foods that are absorbed into the bloodstream are now considered enemies, and your immune system will develop reactions to many of them, leading to food intolerances. And food sensitivities develop. The damaged microvilli along the intestinal lining cannot manufacture the digestive enzymes they needed to break down the foods for proper digestion. The result conditions allows food molecules to flow into the bloodstream that have not been completely broken down into the nutrients your body needs. See, they're too big. They should be smaller. Remember, those scissors should be cutting them off into one molecule, each one. But those clumps of molecules are just getting in there. And the root cause is not allergies, but a leaky gut. And leaky guts lets large food molecules into your bloodstream, and this increases inflammation, which is a cornerstone of virtually all brain disorders, from Alzheimer's and multiple sclerosis to Parkinson's and autism. So just remember that connection I'm trying to get today is between your gut and your brain, the thinking in your brain. The root cause is not allergies, but leaky gut. Gut microbiome is 99% of the DNA in your body and is highly responsive and changeable based on lifestyle choices, most importantly, our food choices. Gut bacteria actually influences the expression of our genes, 23,000 genes. The bugs that live within us are changing our genome expression moment by moment. Because we're changing our gut bacteria, we are changing the signals that are going to our own DNA coding now for increasing things like free radicals, oxidative stress, and inflammation. And it's a powerful player in many use in terms of so many disease processes. Scientists now know that the makeup of the gut bacteria influence the brain, and you can change the gut bacteria by intervention, by taking probiotics or prebiotics. Now, probiotics are your cultured foods and or we can say Acidophilus, bifidus. It's interesting, Acidophilus and bifidus are known to be probiotics, but did you know that in kefir, the one that you can make yourself, which we can do a class on that, we can do some talk on kefir, you can get 35 different probiotics in there. It's known that's in your kefir. So you just don't have, once you start having food, you get more so than just an isolated strain. Prebiotics, they're just foods that are very rich in fibre, that are, they are like, they set the stage. They give you your body the right conditions to make your probiotics. And can I tell you that for me, how I do it is, like, for instance, I think I'm talking about B12. I'll wait till I get to the B12 part. What will we put in our bodies will actually help or hinder the brain's neural function. So scientists have identified more than 50 kinds of neurotransmitters, all which have some impact on mental health. I've got this book at home and it's called The Lost Art of Thinking by Dr. Neil Nedley. Dr. Nedley is the man who has actually created the Depression Recovery book. He's got a book on depression, excellent. And some of our programs, which right at the end, I'm going to share with you, that's later on in this series, towards the end of the year, are going to be on the causes and the cures of depression. Very interesting, because he goes into it. There's certain causes and cures for depression. But one of his books, I bought his book called The Lost Art of Thinking, and he says we need different foods that are rich in amino acids, healthy fats, vitamins and minerals, and toxic insults from common pollutants must be avoided. And be very careful what you choose to eat and avoid harmful foods. And, as I'm getting older, I'm getting fussier and fussier with what I'm putting in my body. And you know what? It's paying off. Will pay off for everyone. But additional strategies to strengthen your brain power. a vaginal birth. Well, you can't help it if you were born by cesarean, okay? But you can repair that. There are ways to repair that. But a C-section triples the risk for attention deficit and doubles the risk for autism in the child. Some of you may have heard about that before. And dramatically increases the risk that your child will struggle with obesity, type 1 diabetes and allergies, just from having a C-section.
Yeah, because the baby picks up all the probiotics as you...
Okay, now here it is. This is Dr. Perlmutter, that's this man here. And in his book, I wrote this out, he suggests a technique. He says if you can talk your doctor into the woman who has gone into labour, they put a gauze sponge placed in the birth canal before the mother is given any antibiotics. Then that gauze sponge is just put aside, but when the baby is born, that gauze sponge is wiped over the baby's face and over everywhere. And guess what happens? The baby gets inoculated. And it gets the mother's intestinal flora. But he says, unfortunately, at present it's unlikely you'd be able to get your doctor to do it. But I believe some of the doctors would.
Some of them do it.
So yeah, I believe you'd need to ask around and you'd need to do it. But your baby needs to have that.
The problem, though, is if the mother doesn't have good...
Yes, the mother needs to have good flora first as well, a microbiome too. And you get your microbiome by the food you eat. Remember that. You need a good and the more prebiotics, the more probiotics, the more fresh fruit, that whole food plant-based diet you eat, the better your health is going to be. Also breastfeeding. Obviously we know that's quite, you get it from the baby gets it from the mother on when she's breastfeeding. This is quite an interesting one. Antibiotics change microbiome. And I found this in this book here, this Brain Maker, and I thought to myself, I want to share this one. Most studies have shown that the more bacteroidetes you have compared to firmicutes, the leaner you will be. Now, there are two different types of microbiome in your digestive. So you've got the one that will cause you to be leaner or the one that will cause you to be fatter. When present in excess, firmicutes increases your risk of obesity. When you change the animal's microbiome using antibiotics, they gain weight. Now, you know that for when a farmer has a cow, if he wants to fatten up the cow, he gives them antibiotics because that puts on weight on the cow. Okay, the same thing occurs in our bodies. Disinfectant products, antibacterial soaps and hand gels should be avoided as much as possible. Now, I have one of my crusades I told you a few weeks ago is against 2-minute noodles, which I told you about that last time. But another little hobby horse I have are all these disinfectants, all these gel soaps, and how many times you go to a bathroom and you want to wash your hands. There's no cake of soap there. There's just a little bottle with a pump spray in it. What's in that? I ask you, check what's in it, because if it's a bunch of chemicals, it's no good for you. You're absorbing that into your body. And if it's antibacterial, I've got information on a study where they've compared those antibacterial soaps to normal cake of soap. And you get just as much protection from a normal cake of soap as you do from these pump sprays. And I have a real thing about not using that. If I go into a public toilet and that's all that's there, I'll use it. But for me at home, I'm not going to buy it at home and use it at home. I have a cake of soap. You want to wash your hands? Go to the toilet, You'll use a cake of soap at my place. No, none of these pump sprays. Because these disinfectants, these antibacterial soaps and hand gels are causing us, our health, to break down completely. You need to get right away from them. And enough said on that one. Refined sugar and processed fructose. Sugar and high fructose corn syrup, I told you this a little time ago. The fructose in particular promotes gut dysbiosis. And there's a good correlation between fructose consumption and the inflammatory marker that shows your gut is leaking. Fructose causes sugar in your blood to bind to proteins, and this too is correlated with leaky gut, may explain why fructose consumption is related to increased gut permeability and inflammatory disease like obesity. And there's no doubt we have an obesity epidemic in the world, and you probably find, you think, oh, I'm a little bit heavier than I wished I was, you know. We are all affected by it. Genetically engineered foods and pesticides. Avoid genetically engineered foods. And how hard is it? Well, you've got to be careful. Glyphosate, the herbicide used on many crops, has also been found to alter the human microbiome. I'll go into this a lot deeper next talk, because I'm going to talk specifically on what glyphosate is made from. While we must avoid GMO foods, but of equal importance is any food that has been sprayed with any weed killer or pesticide. Very important. You see how many, it's not just it's in the food, but it's sprayed onto it. So you need to be careful. And also there's sometimes they also have, for instance, they have a, like you can, insect repellent. If you have an insect repellent which has DEET, D-E-E-T, that is incredibly harmful for your body. So if you want to put on an insect repellent and you've got DEET, you'd put that chemical in your body. It actually has they call it a binary form of, it has to have two triggers. One trigger is the chemical that you put on your skin. The other chemical is found in your weed killers and your pesticides that you're eating inside your body, and it will cause incredible neurological problems. It will cause lots of problems. So get rid of your DEET, your insecticides, all these things there. There are so many things. Life has to be so much simpler. And somebody said they'd like to live back in 50 years ago or 100 years ago. They could manage, and I think I could. I remember back years ago when I was a young kid, things were so much simpler then. We didn't have all these problems. Now, these probiotic foods, focus on eating probiotic foods, your fermented vegetables, your sauerkraut, and your kefir. Now, I actually bought these. These are the bottles. I put them on bottles. And these are, I'll just talk about the broad-spectrum probiotic, a supplement you're going to advisable, especially if you have to take a course of antibiotics. So if you're on an antibiotics, you must go on a course of probiotic foods. Now, these here are ones that I've got. Now, those ones on the right are called crowdsource lids, and they're quite dear because I bought them from America. But those lids screw on the top of those jars that are mason-sized jars. So you've got a little jar or a bigger jar. And inside that lid, there is a little channel that you fill with water, and you sit that cup. That is a cup that you just sit on top. Because when you're fermenting food, it will release carbon dioxide. And if you have a tight lid, it's going to explode. So it has to let out very slowly this carbon dioxide, so you let it out with a water seal. So it just bubbles up through the water and it just disperses out. And so it's ideal. Now, the one on the left is a Fowler's, which is is like a little plastic thing, but it's like at the bottle, you can see the bottle, it clips on, you've got your ring, you've got your lid and your clip, so it's pretty much sealed, but down in the bottom, I'm just trying to look for the light. I haven't got a little light on this, have I, Ralph? No. Okay. Anyhow, in the bottom of that, you can see that you make a water seal in there. Down the bottom, that little, like it's a test tubey sort of thing, you just fill that up with water part way, and it has a water seal in there. They're not as dear. You can get them from Fowler's. I think I paid $15 or something for one of those with a lid. But they're ideal because you put them on your Fowler's jar and you can just make your own probiotics. Prebiotics, not probiotics. Yeah. I didn't try it before. I don't want to... Look, it'll be right. Thanks. Okay, prebiotic fibre. They're in non-digestible, partially digestible food ingredients that stimulate the growth of a healthy bacteria in the colon. And you know what I find? I've got things in my garden, not as much now because it's sort of like winter, but if I go outside and pick up some lettuce or some bok choy or something like that, I'll look at it and I say, you know what, it's not dirty. I'm not going in and I'm not washing everything. Yes, I'll wash a carrot. But if I was in there and if we have tomatoes, I will go out and I'll pick my tomato. I know I haven't sprayed it. Why do I have to wash it? You know, by washing it, you're washing off all your prebiotics. That's what you must realise. Where do animals... We know that animals have B12. Where do the animals get the B12 from? Well, they get it from the food that they're eating because they're not washing their vegetables. We are so paranoid with washing. Do you know, Dr. Perlmutter, he talked about these firmicutes. He talked about these... Remember I said to you about these firmicutes and that bacteroidetes? He said, you go to places in Africa, you've got children who are just crawling around in the dirt, and you would think, oh, these little children, they're not as clean as you would like them to be. But he said they get no ADHD. And as adults, they've got any Alzheimer's. So they've got a completely different microbiome. And it's quite interesting. He says that if you take somebody, and don't ask me how they do this, but they can give people fecal transplants. I don't know how they do it, but they take something out of someone and put it in someone else, and they can actually take it from a lean person and put it into an obese person, and that obese person will lose weight, and vice versa. They can do it the other way around. So our microbiome is what is causing us to be fat or thin.
They were giving people fecal capsules to help cure their autoimmune disease.
Yes, fecal capsules to...
15 years ago, a couple of doctors
Yeah. You must understand, you've got to get your microbiome in order. And you will not get your microbiome in order while you're using chemicals and all those sort of things and pesticides on food. You need to be careful. Yes, if I was going to buy my lettuce or whatever from wherever, I'm going to wash it, you know. But I know what I'm growing. And I'm growing it and I'm not going to wash it. Just remember that. Just don't need to wash every single thing. And we found last summer, I think I told some of you, I think I said at one of the classes, we found an apple tree that was wild right out in the middle of nowhere, and it had beautiful apples on. And we picked them. We didn't wash them. No, I know you get certain chemicals that are floating around in the air from the chemtrails. I understand that. But you know what? Your body is able to handle a certain amount of it. And if you're not abusing it, you can handle a certain amount of this that's coming into your body. But remember your prebiotics, a lot of it is in your cabbage family. Now, another thing is you need to chew your foods thoroughly. Chew, 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 chew. And this is one of the hardest things to do. Lots of things are hard to do. But if you're used to just chew, 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 you know, they say that it's more important for the length of time that the food is in your mouth, the more nutrition you get out of it. Food needs to be broken down in our mouths before reaching our stomach. Our food should be pureed in our mouths before it gets into our stomach. And it's a mental thing because you've got to concentrate to chew slowly.
Doesn't it stimulate the hydrochloric acid?
That's right. You stimulate your hydrochloric acid. Everything works better if you chew your food thoroughly. You need to be careful. You need to stay well hydrated. Drink lots of water. Now, most people don't know and don't drink enough water. And some people think they drink water and they don't. I had a friend, she has rheumatoid arthritis, and for a while she was put onto 3 litres of water a day as opposed to what she was drinking. And she noticed all of a sudden she had much more freedom in her hands than she had prior to it. So you need to up your intake of water, make sure, and in this weather, you need to make your water just tepid. Because you won't get it down if it's cold. It's too cold. So we leave a space in the top of our glass when we're drinking water, and we put a splash of hot water in there. And then it just goes down easily. And you can drink water, plenty of water in the winter, if you add a little bit of hot water to it. And you get used to it. Some people say, years ago when you'd think people would say, oh, you can't drink lukewarm water, it makes you sick. Well, you know something, I'm so used to it, I can drink it. I just drink it now. Because you remember, our brains run on electrical impulses. We need to realise that. Another thing you can do for your brain is take ginkgo biloba. And it says there that they said another 2006 found ginkgo as effective as a dementia drug Aricept for treating mild to moderate Alzheimer's type of dementia. So get into ginkgo biloba. Another one is bacopa, brahmi and rosemary. You know, the brain, look up your brain herbs. There's some that feed your brain. Vitamin B12. A small Finnish study found in the Journal of Neurology found that people who consume foods rich in B12 may reduce their risk of Alzheimer's in their later years. And this is one thing, as a vegan, vegetarian or a whole food plant-based diet, I am aware that I need at times, and at times I do supplement, we have supplements of B12. I'm not fussy on it because I'm also eating lots of leafy greens that I'm getting from my garden. If you're doing that, you don't need to be as careful about it, but you also need to be very mindful. If you're just having shop-bought vegetables, you need to be mindful of that. So you may need to have and I believe if you need to watch it very carefully and have it doesn't take much to have a B12 supplement nowadays. But I won't go into any more of that. Plus you need a zinc. Zinc is very essential. And if you want to have, especially very good for men, to avoid any prostate problems, use your pumpkin seeds, your green pumpkin seeds. Very rich in zinc. And so when we're having them, and I can still remember this. This is years and years ago. My dad told me one of his friends used to say to him, I am always going to take pumpkin seeds, so I'm not going to get prostate. And he didn't, you know. And this was many years ago, before it was commonly known. And my dad decided he'd get onto it too, because he developed prostate, but he was able to cure it naturally because he got onto his pumpkin seeds.
They're also good for dogs,
Good for worming dogs, yeah, your green pumpkin seeds. By the way, if you want to get a good quality pumpkin seed, there is a supply that's down in Ovens, Victoria, you know, on the way in between Myrtleford and Bright. There is a pumpkin patch, I think it's Pumpkin Farm or something like that it's called. It's the only organic pumpkin place in Australia, and we've got it right at our door. And it's worthwhile going there. I go there and I buy myself a big bag, it's like 5 kilos, and it's like $100 and nearly $200. It's costs. But you may as well go there, buy your supply up, and you're getting top quality pumpkin seeds, the only organic ones. Because I looked around, I found before that the only other organic pumpkin seeds that I could find were grown in China. And somehow or other, I didn't trust them. I didn't trust them.
I found some a little bit there at the market on the causeway, but I don't know where they were from, but I'd like to know if maybe they were from that place.
I would suspect they are from. I would suspect they're from, and they are beautiful.
They were much better than the shops.
Oh, yes. Can I tell you, it is worthwhile to go there. And if anyone's watching online, I know they have a shop, and I can't quite remember. I think it's called the Pumpkin. Yeah, they're pepitos, but the pumpkin farm, I can't remember the name of it, but it's on was it Wondillagong, Peter? No, it's at Ovens, that's it. It's at Ovens. I'm just trying to think of they're right at Ovens when you... Yes, you can't miss it. It's very obvious. It's right on the road there. But it's worthwhile going in there. And they have pumpkin seed oil. They have pumpkin seeds. They also have sunflower seeds, organic, their own organic that they've grown themselves. So they grow them themselves. So it's worthwhile going there. Selenium, we know selenium is, we get where them from? Brazil nuts. You need selenium in your diet. You need safe sun exposure, and you can't get too much of that now here. And last summer was very hard to find a good sunny. I tried to look. It was always overcast all summer long, very little sun. But a strong links between low levels of vitamin D in Alzheimer's patients and poor outcomes on cognitive tests have been revealed. Yes, depression, critical that people get in the sunlight, and especially people who are depressed, critical they get into that sunlight and allow the sun right into their eyes. And they're not to wearing dark glasses. Dark glasses are not good for your health. Exercise regularly. Exercise can trigger change in the way the amyloid precursor protein is metabolized. Thus, it's all these common sense things, but sometimes, and another one, how hard is it to breathe deeply? Do you know something? The only way I can really remember to breathe deeply is when I'm exercising. That's why it's so good. And when we exercise, Peter and I like to have a little burst of running. And we go up behind our house where we live, and there's a hill up there, and it's quite well, it's not that steep, really. But for an old people like us, it really puffs us. And we get up there and my heart is racing and I'm breathing. Oh, I thought to myself, this is... Anyhow. But it makes you breathe deeply. And if you are sick, if you're critically sick, and I can still remember one guy, I came to a class, I was running a class down near Melbourne, and one guy came there and he put his hand up. He says, I want to let you know. He says, I was training, some years ago I was training for martial arts. He said, I was deep breathing, and I can't remember if he says 1 or 2 hours a day. Wow. He said he could not believe how he could think. He could think so clearly. And so I thought to myself, how can I remember to do it well? I could never do it 1 or 2 hours a day. So I think, look, every hour, I'm just going to do a minute of it every hour. And I've tried that, but it sort of fizzles out after a while and you forget. So what I've done is I've actually had my kitchen timer there to get every minute, every hour to remind me to go and do some deep breathing. But look, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I figured the more deep breathe you get into it, because it's so hard.
Traffic lights when you're sitting at the
True, you've got to get some trigger to get you into it, because we shallow breathe so much and we're not deep breathing. And, you know, we should be breathing about 6 times a minute, and most of us are doing about 15. And so if you can, and it's not hard to do 6. So, but that's another subject. We touched on that when we did in the New Start talk. Rewind in your sleep. Now, sleep deprivation is critical for thinking straight. Adequate sleep is the foundation for peak mental performance. So we really need to get good sleep. And I love to get to sleep early. I'm a person, I like to be in bed. In this weather, I could be in bed by 7 o'clock. And sometimes I push it a bit. And sometimes I push it a bit to 7:30, 8. But after that, I'm history. Peter said to me, "My, you look tired." I said, "I feel tired." Because I like to... I'm up at 4 o'clock.
It's too dark, it's too cold.
Yes, I know, but I love it. Absolutely love it. I sit there and I have a blanket around me and I'm warm and everything's... And I just love it. That's when I do my Bible study. And I can think clearly and I've got at least 2, sometimes even 2.5 hours where I can just do a Bible study. And you can learn a lot, you can think, and my mind is working. Yeah. Good music improves mental performance. And, you know, but not all music does this. It actually is melodic, classical music and listening to hymns will actually found most effective even among those who do not do it or do not even prefer to do it. This is in Dr. Nedley's book. They did a survey once, and was a Swedish research, and they had members singing a choir. Now, if you've got people in a choir, they're all singing the same thing. And they said they had such a sense of well-being because they were breathing in unison. All of their heartbeats were at the same time. They were beating in unison. And there was so much healing in that. And do you remember I don't know if you heard about some people know how healing it is to get people singing in choirs. You know, there's a choir called, I think it's the Choir of Hard Knocks or something like that, where they're getting people to sing. So you learn to sing. And sometimes in my little room by myself, I sing. Not necessarily very good. I'm not a singer, but I enjoy it. I sing to myself. And so I know that it does something. Bible study. Now, this is an interesting one because a lot of people don't realise how much power Bible study has. Did you know that they have taken people who are just kids in the classroom and those people who have just been doing Bible study and those who have just been doing normal school work, and they test them, those who have been doing Bible study are much brighter. They can think much clearer. Very interesting. I found there's lots of studies like that's going on there. But it will improve your thinking. And they say memorise it. If you've heard Barbara O'Neill's talking, she memorises. And I memorise some, but not as much as her do. And I've been away. We've shared some times together, and I just am in awe what she does. And she says, I haven't got a good memory. I just work hard at it. Isn't that with all of us? She just works hard at it. Avoid and eliminate mercury from your body. Dental amalgam fillings, which are 50% mercury by weight, are one of the most major sources of heavy medical toxicity. And you know how many of us in my age, you'd get a little hole in your tooth, they just take you in and put amalgam filling in it. There's no such thing as plastic fillings then. And so what happens? Amalgam fillings. And it causes problems with our thinking. Avoid aluminium such as antiperspirants, non-stick cookware, vaccine adjuvants, plus your vaccines, your flu vaccines, plus you know who what vaccination. Yeah. These all contain mercury, aluminium and well-known neurotoxic and immunotoxic agents. And what this vaccine, I've done a lot of research, what this vaccine's got in it, it is bad news.
A guy said to me the other day, I had my booster COVID shot and I had my flu shot on the same day. I went, holy moly.
Okay, yes.
He was so pleased, you know, he had badges. Such a good man.
Yes. But we can also avoid some drugs. These are the drugs you have to be careful of. Some people are on drugs. Statin drugs. You need to be aware what you're on can cause problems in your body. Challenge your mind daily. And this is what my husband does. And I do too. He does it more so than me. He loves crossword puzzles. We have a sort of an agreement. We go to the paid newspaper, he does the crosswords, and I will do the Sudoku. I like Sudoku. And I can normally get those Sudokus out quite easily. So, but you need to stimulate your mind. Now, this is something I want to just spend a little bit of time on here, cooking grains correctly. Now, who's heard of this? For over 120 years, Seventh-day Adventists have had the advantage of knowing that grains used for cereal or porridge should have several hours of cooking. That's from Ministry of Healing, page 301, tells this is important to health principle. Those who have accepted this principle as a way of life and cooked their grains for a long time have, unknown to them, received a benefit. Now, this was an experiment done at Uchee Pines in America. Now, Uchee Pines is a place like you could go if you wanted to get well naturally. You know, it's like a health retreat, sanitarium type of place. At that stage, it was run by Dr. Agatha Thrash and her husband, Dr. Calvin Thrash. Now, both of them have since passed away. But it's still work in America. It's still existing. You can go there as a health retreat. But Dr. Agatha did this experiment because this was her field of I think she was I can't remember what field she was in, but she loved research. She did an experiment showing what happens during the cooking of grains. In 1968, Volkheimer reported finding starch granules in blood, urine, bile and human milk after the subject had drunk a suspension of water and raw starch. In recent years, radiologists have discovered tiny lacunar scars present in the brains of all people over the age of 30, which are believed come from the intake of inadequately cooked starch. Now, these are your grains that are not cooked properly. Now, one of the grains which I'm just draw your attention to, be careful of, do not eat raw muesli.
Oh, I was just going to say.
That is inadequate. When you have a grain, and I'll talk about that in a minute, you have to toast it. It needs to become golden before it is broken down. I'll go on that a little bit more. Incompletely hydrolyzed cooked starch remains intact and can pass through the intestinal wall and enter into the general blood circulation. But some of these granules travel into and block the smallest arteries, called arterioles, and the tiniest of all the blood vessels, the capillaries. Now, all the grains, this is Dr. Thrasher's, her experiment. All the grains were tested at 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, and 4 hours. What she found, rolled oats took 90 minutes to cook. Corn grits took 3 hours. Cornmeal, 45 to 60 minutes. Quick oats, 25 to 30 minutes. Pasta, 30 minutes. Now, this is something that, but you know what? If you do this, you won't get those little scars lodge in your brain, and they stop you from thinking properly. And she was so excited. I can remember talking to Barbara when she'd been over there. She was visiting, and Dr. Thrash was alive. And she came back and she says, Dr. Thrash was telling me all about this experiment. We mustn't eat raw, or you must cook your grains thoroughly. Now, what about having a waffle or something like that, where you're not cooking your grains for all that amount of time? They're boiled, right? They're broken down in a different way. But if you're browning them, remember I said to you, you can brown it. So breads need to brown. When you have a chemical reaction happens when starch chains are broken down. So what you can do to cut your cooking time down is, there's a word called dextrinize your grain. What you do is you take that dry grain, no water whatsoever, it's just the grain. Let's take, you've got a packet of rice. You want to dextrinize it. You may want to dextrinize a cup, or you may want to dextrinize the whole packet. You just lightly, very lightly toast them in a fry pan, and you just warm them through, and you just warm them through a little bit, and they will change colour to their light golden. Once they're light golden, you have changed the molecule of starch in that grain, and it is much, much easier for your body to digest.
It's a resistant starch then.
Yeah.
Does it become a resistant?
I'm not sure about that. Okay. And I dry roast it, or I put a larger packet in a baking dish in a pan in the oven, and I will pop them in the oven maybe about 170 for maybe 15-20 minutes. And they are heated through.
Yes. And then you can put that back in the bag.
Then I allow them to cool them down. Then I put them back in my bottle or my jar where I serve. And you don't need to cook them up on that day. You can have them ready, until you empty the packet out.
And should you do that to oats as well?
I believe you should do that to oats as well.
So if you're going to make an oat porridge,
Yes.
dry roast
Dry roast your oats first, and you'll cut the time down. I normally don't, but sometimes I do. If you do a really large lot, you may. Okay.
Would soaking overnight make up some of the time, or you literally have to simmer it for 90 minutes if it's, say, rolled over?
Now, you have to simmer. Although what I do when I'm cooking, but I'll just talk about that, since amaranth, quinoa and buckwheat contain starches not like grains, you only cook on them until they taste done. That's different. Okay, but now in the morning, what I do is I've got a little mini cooker, because it's only Peter and I living at home now. So I've got a little mini cooker that I put on, and I've got it on one of those kitchen timers, and my kitchen timer comes on 4 hours. And so what I do is I put in my oats or whatever, rice or whatever I do, or my millet. Sometimes I even have tapioca, whatever I put in, what grain it comes in. And I'll put it in the night before. And I've got it for about 4 hours of cooking. And I've got it in cold water, so it brings it up to the heat, and it brings it right through, and it's ready in the morning. And it just works It's so easy because you get up and your breakfast's already cooked. And all you've done in the morning is put it in cold in the little mini cooker with the kitchen timer on. We just go. They're not expensive. I think I got mine from Safeway for about $10 or something like that. Yeah, some of them are dearer, but I've got mine for. I'm talking about the timer. The mini cooker was $20 when I bought it.
What's a mini cooker?
A little slow cooker.
Oh, a slow.
A slow cooker, but it's a very small size. Yeah, are they for sale now? Yeah, okay.
Because you can put it on at night and let it slow cook.
Oh, yeah, it is. I use it for legumes. I've got to know, if I'm putting it on grains overnight, I'll put it on the low speed. But if I decide I think I'll have legumes, and especially if I have brown lentils for breakfast, I'll need to put it on high speed because it won't be cooked enough. So you need to be careful. You need to know what your time is. Just learn to know your appliance and what your food you're cooking, because some take different lengths of time. And so sometimes you've got to do it differently.
Cornmeal, is that...
That's your polenta. Your polenta. So they all, and I do the same with polenta. Sometimes I'll make a mixture of polenta, rice, and millet, and I'll put the whole three of them in together. And then sometimes what I do is I'll just I'll have that over some fruit and cereal, and have a bit of kefir over the top of that. But sometimes I'll make a savoury sauce over it, which is in my book, it's a cashew sauce, yeah, which I love. Okay, now in closing, there are lots and lots of many toxins you can but you can get toxins everywhere. You need to be careful. Avoid them from this is from heavy metals and agricultural chemicals, plastics, stress, electromagnetic radiation, which we're going to talk about next time. Okay, but I'm going to talk to you about something else now. In the 1800s, Seventh-day Adventists have been teaching a healthy lifestyle for over 150 years. And science is now validating what we have been teaching. Statistics show Seventh-day Adventists who follow these teachings closely have a health advantage. I want to tell you about some of the topics that Seventh-day Adventists are following, written by Ellen White. Now, Ellen White, Seventh-day Adventists believe Ellen White was a lady who was being given inspiration of God, and she's written lots and lots of things down, but this is just some of them. She says meat eating is the main cause of cancer. Now, you've got to remember she wrote this in the 1800s. Now, we have found that out. It's true now. Smoking, alcohol, harmful to your health. That was then. She was like way, way ahead of her time. She says no coffee or tea. It's harmful for your body. Sugar is harmful. Don't eat cheese. It's very harmful. No overeating. No eating between meals. Avoid richly highly spiced food. Drink lots of water. Eat fresh fruits and vegetables. No drinking with meals. Eat simple, healthy, nutritious meals. Fast 1 or 2 days a week. And this is by Colin Campbell. He wrote, remember I talked to you, he was the author of the China study. Okay, now I'm not aware of anyone who is more on point than Ellen White. Given her background, she is truly an amazing woman. I am convinced that almost 100% of her statements are now substantially supported by scientific evidence that has been developed during the past 2 to 3 decades. What I have come to realise, to even deeply worry about, is why that in this message of Ellen White and others has been mislaid on shelves out of sight. It is abundantly clear to me that it is now the time to bring this forward in whatever way that each of us are able to do so. Now, I've got another book here. This is called God's Nutritionist. This is by a Jewish physician named Robert Cohen. He was so impressed with Ellen White's dietary advice that he published this book, and it's called Pearls of Wisdom from Ellen White, 500 divinely inspired dietary visions. And he goes through there and he lists many of the quotations from her. And after that, he's got a quotation from medical journal that verifies what she says. Remember I said she was way ahead of her time in so many areas. There are 500 of White's pearls of wisdom, words that are as practical, insightful and moral as they are accurate, gathered from her many works. These classic quotations, beautifully present in her beliefs, beautifully present her beliefs from her stance as an ardent vegetarian to a view on dairy products. Okay, there's another thing. I don't know if I actually bought this when it came out in 2005, and it talked about the blue zones. Has anyone heard about the blue zones? Blue zones are areas, there's 5 blue zones in the world, and they're from Italy, Japan, Costa Rica, Greece, and Loma Linda. Now, these blue zones are areas in the world where people just live much longer, and they don't know why. So they went in and they researched it. Now, these were Okinawans. This man is 82 years old. He trains for the decathlon, he high jumps and he pole vaults. And he's 82. And you know what? Look at them. They don't overindulge in food. They grow their own food. And so on. They have a lot less heart disease, breast cancer, less dementia. These are the Sardinians. And if you looked at their table, you can't see very clearly there, but if you looked at their table, you'll find that I think there's about 16 people around this table. They're eating in a community, but they are not eating much. You look at their bowls. They've got a bowls and it looks like beans in it, and there's a bit of bread on the table, flat bread. And that's it. And their bowls are not huge. They live much, much longer. This lady here is 112 years old. Now, Loma Linda surveyed 34,000 Adventists who practice vegetarian and health lifestyles. And the average Adventist lives 4 to 10 years longer than the average Californian. Teach spiritual, physical health go hand in hand. And what do Loma Linda Seventh-day Adventists do? They believe that the body is a temple of God. They are vegetarian. They're physically active. They serve others. There's no smoking or drinking, no caffeine, rich foods, certain spices. But they're less susceptible to diseases like cancer, heart disease, obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's. They keep the Bible Sabbath. Research shows attending church regularly is associated with longevity and happiness. The choices we make determine our happiness. They're more alert, less dependent and depressed, and live longer. And more. There's numerous studies. So Adventist women live 5 years longer. They have less cancer, coronary heart diseases and stroke. The average Adventist man lives 7 years longer, and they have less cancer, coronary disease and strokes. So there's numerous diseases out there. And plus, I thought I'd share this couple here. This couple here, we have a good quality life. Okay? I'm going to be 74 next birthday, in the beginning of August, and Peter's going to be 81. And yet, something, we still function well. I can still think. I'm not 100%, but I tell you what, compared to a lot of people my age, I know I've got a lot sharper memory than a lot of people my age. I still move freely. We're still active. We can still exercise. We can even run. And we're on no drugs. So, this? I can still remember I was at one program. And look, it's happened to me quite a few times. It started off when this one young man came to me and he says, "You know what? You are the best advertising for your program." He said, "You are older. I have been doing this for 30 plus years." I said, "Well, this is what's going to happen to you. So I've been doing it for this, and same with Peter. He's really good. He eats what I tell him to eat. Most of the time, huh? Yeah, so I give him what I... But, you know, how many times he said to me, you know, he said, if I was left to my own devices, he said, I'd be dead by now. I'd have a gut out there, you know, and he would. Because there's a tendency in some of the men to overeat and like their food, and some women too. But more studies show that with Adventists, eating meat increases your colon cancer, but eating legumes was protective. Eating nuts reduces the risk of heart attacks, and eating whole wheat bread instead of white bread just reduces heart attacks by 45%. So there's a lot of studies out there. Drinking 5 or more glasses of water a day may reduce heart disease by 50%. Men who had a high consumption of tomatoes reduce their risk of prostate. And drinking soy milk more than once daily may reduce prostate cancer by 70%. And so what are some of the Bell health behaviours? Not smoking, eating a plant-based diet, eating nuts several times a week, and not many nuts. It's not heaps of nuts, just a handful. Regular, and what you can put in your palm of your hand, that's what you need to eat a day.
Do you activate the nuts?
Sometimes I have, but more often than I don't. Not that I should. I know I should, but you can activate the nuts. They are much more nutritious. Regular exercise, maintain normal body weight. Now, the New York Times have said that the average life expectancy is 12 years longer for Seventh-day Adventists than normal population. And 75% fewer die of cancer, respiratory disease, tuberculosis, emphysema, and even accidents. Now, that brings me to this book here, which is a different version of this, Counsels and Diets and Foods. This is the book which I'm telling you about, and I have got... Peter, can we just hand them out? I've got a book for each one of you today. You can have it.
Wow, that's very kind.
There is a book. So you can have them. I don't know where he's gone to.
Well, we're not paying for them.
No, they're for yours. It's a gift from us. So he's going to hand them out here wherever he... I don't know where he's gone to, but anyhow. Where are you, Peter? Can you hand out these books, please? I've opened one of the cartons. So he thought he had to open the carton. Now, I also have a book called Ministry of Healing. There are some copies. You may have picked this up. If you haven't got it, there are some copies down there. Has anyone not got this book, Ministry of Healing? Yeah, okay. See, well, Dean, give those to everyone, Peter, but the Ministry of Healing will give to certain people who haven't got it.
We can pick them up on our way out.
Yes. Okay, next week I'm going to talk to you a few things. Now, I want to still talk to you about fasting. We started a little bit late, so I want to keep you here. Hope you don't mind. This is next on Sunday. What is electrosmog? Okay, now I want to talk to you about fasting. And also, Peter, there's a few of these Ministry of Healings. Well, Dina, anybody who wants a Ministry of Healing, there's a few out there. Just put your hand up and you can have one of them. If you don't, I don't know if we've got enough here for today. No, the Ministry of Healing. If you don't get enough, I can bring some more in. I gave these earlier on in the series. Who else wanted one? I've got one more of these. Have you got one? You can get one later on. Sorry about that. Yes. Well, just hand it out. We'll bring some more next time. Sorry about that. I didn't have as many of those. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you about fasting. Your body rests and heals, accumulated waste expelled from body, cognitive performance is really boosted, It reduces inflammation, supports weight loss and decreases the risk of metabolic diseases. Now I'm going to talk to you about different fastings. I'll just probably take a little bit longer. It'll go over a little bit over 12 o'clock, but we started late. That's my excuse. Water fasting. Has anyone here water fasted?
I'm very bad at that.
How long have you water fasted for?
2 days. Wow.
How long have you water fasted?
From Friday night or Friday afternoon until Sunday when I went to church.
Yeah.
It was part of a religion I was in.
Okay, Peter and I have water fasted for 4.5, I think 5 days. And it was very hard. It was very, very hard. You need to have a mindset to do it. We wanted to do it. We wanted to experiment and we wanted to do it. But can I tell you what? It is not hard to fast for 1 day a week. And I have a friend, by the way, I just preface this. I have a friend who has diabetes, and every time her blood sugar goes up, she just fasts.
Water fasts.
Water fast, and I should tell you, water fast means drinking water. Someone said to me, water fast. Water fast means you don't drink any water.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Now, everyone shouldn't understand. I assumed everybody knows that water fast means you just drink only water. The only thing you're taking in is water. And you drink quite a lot of it. But, I've got a book on fasting. There's been some guy, he fasts, you can fast for 20, 30, 40 days. Some of the one was an Olympic skating athlete who had a leg injury, and just by water fasting, his leg injury was healed.
Yeah, because it's the what's it called? Stem cell therapy, stem cell
Yes.
production.
And by the way, too, one of the things that they are saying, if you have got very severe reaction to this injection that's going out, did you know that by fasting for 3 days on water with nutrients, and you can reset your body? Your body resets. So you need to know, and there's more research coming out on that, but there's a lot that Dr. Henry Ely, E-A-L-Y, if you go, he's got somewhere I've got all his information, but he talks about it. But water fasting. Now, it is not hard for us to water fast for 1 day. Not hard at all. And you're not going to drop over dead by not eating for 1 day. I can assure you. Okay? Now, there's a lot I can say about that. But now let's just go on to the next one. Juice fasting. You can juice, and this is primarily vegetable juice. We're not talking about fruit juices here because they actually put your body out of order because, you get too much sugar in. Vegetables are what we need to do it. And you can do, and I love doing juice fasts in the summer when I've got lots of cucumbers and lots of things like that. Yeah, and you've got those vegetables. It's harder to juice fast in the winter when you've got to buy everything. And I often grow zucchinis. Now, it's nothing like having a huge zucchini. And I know zucchini juice is absolutely fantastic to help your pancreas. Okay, so you have problems with your pancreas, you use zucchini juice. And you just look up your juices, what the juices do in your body. But juice fasting, many, many times we've juice fasted for 2, 3, 4, you can even juice fast for a week. You will stay alive and you'll be quite easy to do it. I've actually even got a juice fast, how many kilograms of vegetables you need and all that sort of thing. And I've had it in my class. I don't know if you entered that class, Beryl, when I handed that one out. But you can have and you have a juice every 2 hours. Some people actually just have 3 juices a day. That's all they need. But some people need it every 2 hours. And you don't feel hungry. And you have 5 juices during the day. Some people even have broth at night, vegetable broth, which you can have. And sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But it is nice to make up your vegetable broth. And so you can have that. That is a great way to fast, but can I tell you, you're juicing all this stuff. You know, it's not fun because you've got to clean it all up and that. I have a juicer that I can actually make it and it doesn't oxidise. I can put it in little bottles and I can keep it in the fridge. It keeps for a couple of days. But normally you've got to juice and you've got to use the juice straight away. So that is an excellent way to fast too. And we have done it many times, right? Intermittent fasting that means you're 18 hours between meals. Now, Peter and I have intermittent fasted for over 30 years, every day. We have eaten 2 meals a day. We eat breakfast, lunch. Some people move their meals and like to eat lunch and evening meal. I actually like to have it earlier because I don't like food in my stomach when I go to bed. Now, it's not hard to do. We used to do it. Peter was working hard when he was doing this in a physical job. I would just pack his lunch every day and give him a good lunch. It was an effort, but I did it. And sometimes for years, I was just reflecting back, sometimes for years I actually had, I would give my family, the kids were home then, and they were teenagers at school, I would cook up my vegetable meal in the morning for breakfast. That's what I sent them to school with. Who gave the rule that says you have to have cereal in the morning and breakfast for... So I just swapped it around. And they loved it. We loved it for years. So we did that, had our breakfast with our vegetable meal. For breakfast for us, because it suits our lifestyle, I would say probably about 7:15, 7:30, and then we eat our lunch probably about 1-ish in that time frame in there, around about that, 5 to 6 hours between our meals. And that's it. One, sometimes a little bit, in that time frame. But I'm hungry when I get to lunch. Well, I'm not hungry now. I just had breakfast, that's it. And then I won't eat anything till next morning, nothing. Now what happens after that 12 hours, your body can start doing that deep cleaning in your body. And it doesn't do it until 12 hours after your last meal. So if your last meal is at 6 o'clock of an evening, let's just say and then you have your breakfast is at 7 o'clock in the morning, you've only got 1 hour of deep cleaning. And it's not very much. Your body needs to, and it's like, as I said earlier, if you go through your house, you'll just do the housework every day. But then every once in a while, you want to give your house a really deep clean, really good, thorough cleaning. Well, if you're doing that every day, you're giving your body every day a chance to reheat. Do you know, when I started this and we switched over to 2 meals a day, Peter's weight fell off. He lost about 1.5 stone. I lost probably about 3/4 of a stone, and I have stayed the same weight pretty much for the 30 years, fluctuating maybe 3 or 4 kilos over the years. Peter the same. We've just stayed stable. Our weight is very stable. And so, because your body has the chance to detoxify, get rid of everything. And sometimes you might have to do it by yourself. And I've heard people say, oh, well, you know what? It's the only time I get down to sit down and eat with my family. Well, do you know, sometimes there are rare times we eat our evening meal. If we want to have going somewhere or we're invited somewhere, we'll have an evening meal. But normally we won't eat lunch. And you know what? It puts your whole body out. I don't like it, but it's not my choice, but I do it sometimes. Because, as I said, you have to sometimes you like to socialise with your family a little bit. And so that's what I do. But then many times we'll have, and if I have some of my grandchildren come around and we socialise or something like that, and I just sit and talk to them. I'll let them eat. I'll just sit with them and let them eat. I said, don't worry about me. I'm not hungry. And I really don't get hungry. Occasionally I might, depending what I've eaten, But even if I do, I don't care. I just go to bed hungry, you know. You wake up the same. It doesn't make much difference to you. Okay? So remember, it's a very good way. Temperance fasting is another one way to fast, is eat 1/2 of the usual food intake daily, avoiding all your unhealthy foods. So that is another simple way. And remember, when you're eating this way, just eat slowly. The amount of time the food is in your mouth really helps your satiety feeling, you know. If you just bolt that food down and it's gone, it's not going to be terribly nourishing for you. So you leave it and chew it and really thoroughly chew it in your mouth. And the last one is the one I just absolutely love. I have not long come across this, and that meaning probably about 1 or 2 years ago. We've done this a few times. Fruit fasting. This is where you take 2 pieces of identical fruit, and you only have those 2 pieces at morning. Then you have 2 pieces, you can have the same as you had before, or 2 pieces of different fruit, but they're identical. Okay, let's say you have oranges here. 2 oranges, normal size oranges. Then say 2 apples here, normal size apples. If they were very small, I will have 3. And maybe if you have it in the evening, you have a banana. And if they're very small, have maybe 3. Or sometimes if they're tiny ones, have 4. But you know how much you would eat with 2, okay? That's the amount that you have. I gave this diet, and one of my sons, he did this one, and he said, well, he went on it for 2 weeks, and he loved it. He said he could think, he's a teacher, and he said he could think so clearly. And he said, but he got sick of food, so he started a venture, and he said he decided to have berries. Well, how many berries? Well, it's about the same amount that you would have in 2 pieces of fruit. So you think. Now, the clue in you must chew them and chew them and chew them, and when you're finished chewing them, you chew them more. For instance, your apples, you will take about 1/2 hour to eat 2 apples. You'll eat them so slowly and you'll chew them so thoroughly. And you know what? I absolutely loved this. I found it so easy to do this fruit fast. Then I had different fruit, but they must, or remember, they're identical at the same meal, but they don't have to be completely, they could be identical throughout the day, but they don't have to be. Usually they're different. But let's say that you want to, and you don't use avocado in this, and I think it's melon. You don't. But look, I can't remember what it was, but it's avocado for sure. You don't do avocado in this because it's not the cleansing diet that you want. But you've got your basic ones, you know, your oranges, lots of oranges around. Get yourself some really nice oranges and you sit and you chew it. And a little bit quicker to eat an orange than an apple, but still you take a long time to eat it. And you eat it slowly, very, very, very slowly. And, you know, we found that we stayed on this for quite a few days. And I thought, you know what, this is easier than juice fasting. Because the juice fasting is... And you don't need near as much food. With the juice fasting, you've got to buy quite a lot of food for your juices. And I like it. Don't misunderstand me. I like juice fasting. But the fruit fasting is lots easier. 3 times a day. Yes, I do 3 meals a day for the fruit fasting. That's probably because that's the way it was taught to me. And I just keep it. But in between those three fruit meals, you're going to be drinking lots of water. You'll be drinking loads of water. You'll get through, when you're doing this, probably 2 to 3 litres of water a day. So you need to be drinking a lot of water and just be basic on these fruit 3 times a day. So as many as you'd like. You might say, well, like, I'll start for one day and see how you feel. And it's not hard just to do one day. And it's not hard to do one day. There have been times in our life, and we keep saying it, and then we sometimes forget. We say, oh, look, we're going to fast completely do a water fast on a certain day of the week. And sometimes it was very suitable because, it's like the day before you go to the shops and buy your next lot of grass. You've run out of stuff in your fridge. You think it was best to fast on that day than the day that you buy it. So you need to do it. And there have been many times we've used to fast, or like on a Thursday or whatever day. We say, oh, that's my day of fasting. And a lot of people do it. And you know what? It is not hard to do. Now, every time you do that, your body can do a super cleanse and you get rid of all this inflammation in your body. It is so easy to do. Once you get the mind right, you've got to make your decision up and do it. And don't let anyone out there tell you, oh, you can't do that, you'll drop over dead. But can I assure you, you will not die if you just miss one day a meal. You will not die. Now, some people say, oh, yes, but I've got my blood sugar and all that sort of thing. Actually, do you know, this will actually balance your blood sugar. It does. But if you wanted to do it, but maybe you can need to just watch it, monitor it, try it for a while. If it's not for you, so be it. But for many of you, you'll find it is very, very beneficial. Okay, any questions? Yes?
For the 3 times a day, the 2 pieces, do they have to be the same 3 times, or can you have, say, 2 apples, 2 oranges, 2 bananas?
2 apples, 2 oranges, 2 bananas. You could have 2 apples, and 2 apples again. But they have to be the identical fruit at the same time. Because what it does, it takes your body doesn't like all this mess in there. We make our foods and our meals far too complicated. We need to have a much, much less complicated foods in our diet. And next, that brings me to our next class. As I said, our next class, which we're going to have this time in a month's time, after the meeting, I'm going to just show you have a simple meal. It's going to be simple, probably just a smidgen fancier than we would eat at home, but we eat quite simple, and we eat very well, but just simple. Not too many mixtures together at the same meal. Too many people have, there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then they'll top it all off with a dessert. Yeah, and that really causes your body, your body has different digestive enzymes to digest fruit as it does vegetables. So it's really not ideal to put fruit and vegetables at the same meal because of that. Because when you start with your fruit, and when do you eat your fruit? At the beginning of your meal or at the end of your meal, It becomes quite a murky type of thing. People get mixed up with it. So just remember, keep your meals simpler, eat far less mixture. Eat more of it. I can still remember I was once years ago and I thought, I bought this box of apricots and they were beautiful. And I just sat there and I ate about, this was my lunch. I just ate probably 8 or 10 apricots and I just loved them. And that's all I ate. That was my lunch. And when you do that, your body likes it much better instead of having, an apricot and something else here. And then we'll have a piece of bread or whatever there. You've got too much mixture there. It's much better. Just hold on. We've got a microphone now.
Just a question with intermittent fasting.
Yes.
If you're having lunch and dinner and you have a slice of lemon juice in warm water in the morning, is that actually breaking the fast?
No. Some people have lemon juice in their water in the morning, that's fine. We don't, not that we don't, but actually because we have got such nice water, such nice purified water, that I like the taste of my water, you know. Yeah. Actually, I've got those pH strips, you know, test my pH from time to time. And it is. It's just normal. My body is very normal, and I'm rarely ever going over or under. And sometimes I've had a class and I've handed the strips out and I've said, okay, test them. And some of the people who thought they were eating quite healthy, it can come back as quite a shock to them to realise how acidic. Because if your body should be 7.4, but if it's 6.4, your body is 10 times more acidic. And if your body is 5.5, your body is 100 times more acidic. It goes up in multiples. And so if you and you'll find a lot of people with cancer actually have acidity range of 5. Why? That's why, because their body is too acidic. And this fasting helps alleviate your body of food, because once it doesn't have to worry about food, it can start cleaning out and getting rid of all the junk and the toxins that are in your body. Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you. And
I've got a slide of the Vivo farms that people like put that up for.
yes. What were you going to put up, Ralph? Oh, the farm, the address for the Peppo Farms. Peppo Farms, Great Alpine Road, Ovens, Victoria. Can you read that? Can you read the number of the 0357 52 1199? It's worthwhile going there. It's really got a life thing. But remember, go with your bank card. Yes, it's very dangerous because you get tempted to buy these things. Anyhow, thank you for coming. We will see you. Remember, Sunday is the one on electrosmog. This coming Sunday, I will actually send out another reminder because I find that so many people have got so much on that it's just worthwhile. And if you're on the list, you all will be on the list to get it. So, thank you so much, and we'll see you again.